Varric stood on the observation deck of the warship Luminous Dawn. His crystalline skin reflected the light from the stars outside. He had 4 arms, each holding a different tool. His large compound eyes watched the planet below. It was called New Busan, a human colony world. It looked small and weak. Around him, other Calanthe soldiers talked and laughed. They were not worried. The intelligence report said this would be easy. Maybe 10,000 humans lived down there. Most were farmers. The Calanthe had 50,000 trained soldiers. They had warships in orbit. They had weapons that could destroy cities. This battle would be over quickly. Varric had joined the military because his family had always served. His father was a commander. His grandfather had conquered 3 worlds. The Calanthe Empire was strong. They brought order to the galaxy. They helped primitive species. That was what Varric believed. That was what everyone believed. A soldier next to him joked about the humans. He said they would probably surrender without fighting. Another soldier laughed and said humans were too primitive to even know how to fight properly. Varric smiled, but something felt wrong. The human settlement was completely silent. No radio signals, no distress calls, nothing. The landing craft began their descent. Varric watched on his screen as hundreds of ships fell through the atmosphere like metal rain. They landed on the outskirts of the main city. The doors opened. Calanthe soldiers marched out in perfect formations. Everything went according to plan. Then the first reports came through Varric's communication system. The city was empty. Buildings stood with doors open. Food sat on tables. Vehicles were parked in streets. But there were no humans anywhere. Some officers said the humans had run away in fear. High Commander Thalas ordered the troops to advance into the city center. Varric listened to the communications. The soldiers moved deeper into the city. They checked buildings. They searched streets. Everything seemed abandoned. Then someone screamed over the radio. An explosion. Then another. Then dozens more. The tactical display on Varric's screen turned red with warnings. Casualties, lots of them. A building had collapsed on an entire unit. 50 soldiers buried under concrete and steel. Before anyone could respond, gunfire erupted from hidden positions. Calanthe soldiers fell. Their shields flickered and died under the continuous fire. Varric felt his heart beat faster. This was not supposed to happen. Where were the humans? How were they doing this? The communications filled with confused voices. Officers shouted orders. Soldiers called for help. The neat invasion had become chaos in minutes. High Commander Thalas sent Varric's unit down to the surface. They would help secure a communications tower. Varric grabbed his rifle and joined his squad in the landing craft. As they descended, he could see smoke rising from multiple points in the city. The humans were fighting back. But how? They were supposed to be primitive. The craft landed hard. The door opened and Varric ran out with his unit. The city streets were narrow and confusing. Buildings rose on both sides. Windows stared down like dark eyes. Varric's squad moved in formation toward the communications tower. They could see it in the distance, a tall structure reaching into the sky. They had covered half the distance when the street ahead exploded. Varric threw himself behind a concrete barrier. Dust and debris rained down. When he looked up, the squad ahead of them was gone. Just gone. Nothing remained except a crater in the road. Then the shooting started. It came from everywhere at once. Windows, rooftops, doorways. Varric fired his rifle at shapes he could barely see. The humans moved fast. They appeared, shot, and disappeared before the Calanthe could aim properly. 3 of Varric's squadmates fell in the first minute. The squad leader shouted for them to fall back. They ran through the streets trying to reach their landing zone. But the humans had planned this. Every route seemed blocked. Buildings collapsed across streets. More explosions. More gunfire. Varric saw a human soldier for the first time. The human was smaller than a Calanthe but moved incredibly fast. The human threw something. Varric ducked. The explosion killed 2 more of his squadmates. By the time Varric's squad reached the landing zone, only 5 of them remained out of 20. They found other units there, all beaten back from their objectives. Wounded soldiers lay everywhere. Some cried out in pain. Others sat in shock, staring at nothing. The first day ended with the Calanthe controlling only the landing zones. They had tried to push into the city. They had failed. Hundreds were dead. Thousands were wounded. The humans had not lost any ground at all. That night, Varric could not sleep. He kept seeing the explosion that killed his friends. He kept hearing their screams over the radio. This was not how war was supposed to work. The Calanthe were supposed to be superior. They had better weapons and more soldiers. But the humans did not care about that. They fought dirty. They used tricks. They turned the entire city into a weapon. The attacks continued at night. Human soldiers crept close to the Calanthe positions. They destroyed supplies. They sabotaged equipment. They killed sentries silently. When morning came, the Calanthe found 10 more soldiers dead and 3 landing craft damaged beyond repair. High Commander Thalas ordered another push. This time with more soldiers, more firepower. They would break through the human defenses. They had to. The Empire could not accept defeat from such a primitive species. But the second day was worse than the first. The humans had prepared for everything. Every street was trapped. Every building was a fortress. The Calanthe fought for each meter of ground and paid in blood for every advance. Varric was sent to help secure a hospital building. His new squad approached carefully. They checked for traps. They scanned for enemies. Everything seemed clear. They entered the building. It was empty except for medical supplies. The squad leader ordered them to set up defensive positions. They had been there for 2 hours when the humans attacked. They came through the walls, through the floors, through the ceiling. Varric did not even understand how. One moment the building was secure. The next moment human soldiers were everywhere. Varric fired blindly. A human soldier moved past him so fast he could barely track the movement. The human threw something at the medical supplies. A small explosive. It destroyed everything the Calanthe needed, but did not hurt the wounded Calanthe soldiers lying in the next room. Then the humans were gone. The whole attack had taken less than 3 minutes. One of the wounded Calanthe soldiers said something that made Varric's blood cold. The human could have killed us all. They chose not to. They only destroyed our supplies. They wanted us to know they had mercy. That was somehow more terrifying than if they had just killed everyone. Weeks passed. The Calanthe could not break through. The humans controlled the city center. They came out at night to attack. They picked off isolated units. They destroyed equipment. They spread fear. Calanthe soldiers started calling New Busan the graveyard. Varric changed during those weeks. He stopped talking with the other soldiers. He stopped believing the war would be easy. He saw too many friends die. He learned that humans were not primitive. They were dangerous. They fought like nothing the Calanthe had ever faced before. Then one day, High Commander Thalas announced his plan. Every available soldier would attack at once. 40,000 Calanthe troops would push into the human stronghold. Overwhelming force would break the humans. It had to work. The Empire had no other choice. Varric was assigned to the command bunker. He would coordinate communications during the final assault. He sat at his console and watched the tactical displays. Tens of thousands of Calanthe soldiers prepared to attack. Surely this would be enough. Surely the humans could not stop so many. But deep in his heart, Varric was afraid. He had seen what the humans could do. He had watched them turn impossible situations into victories. He had learned that humans fighting for their homes were the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. As dawn broke over New Busan, the Calanthe army began to move. This would decide everything. Either the humans would break or the Calanthe would. There was no middle ground anymore. Varric checked his equipment and prepared for what was coming. He thought about his home and his family. He wondered if he would ever see them again. The dawn was beautiful. The sun rose over New Busan, painting the sky orange and pink. Varric watched from inside the command bunker, 2 kilometers behind the front lines. On his screens, he could see 40,000 Calanthe soldiers moving forward. Tanks rolled beside them. Drones flew overhead. This was the largest force the Calanthe had ever sent to one battle. High Commander Thalas sat in his command chair, confident and calm. He believed the math was simple. The humans had maybe 3,000 fighters left. 40,000 against 3,000. The outcome was certain. Victory was just hours away. The first reports were good. The Calanthe forces advanced into the city. Human resistance seemed light. Some officers even started celebrating early. They thought the humans had finally broken. They thought the humans were running away. Varric wanted to believe it, but something felt wrong. Then everything changed. The city exploded. Not one building or one street. The entire city center detonated at once. Every building the Calanthe had passed. Every street they had crossed, every tunnel beneath their feet, all of it had been rigged with explosives. All of it went off simultaneously. Varric watched his screens turn red. Thousands of signals disappeared in seconds. Thousands of Calanthe soldiers died instantly. The ones who survived staggered through flames and smoke. Their formations were destroyed. Their communications were jammed. Their weapons were scattered. They were lost and confused and terrified. That was when the humans attacked. They came from everywhere. Hidden doors opened in buildings. Tunnels appeared in streets. Humans poured out wearing armor and carrying weapons. But these were not the guerrilla fighters from before. These soldiers moved with terrifying precision. They did not hit and run. They stayed and fought. They systematically destroyed every Calanthe unit they found. Varric listened to the radio channels fill with screams. A captain begged for reinforcements. His unit was surrounded and being cut down. A lieutenant reported that something was killing his soldiers, but he could not see what. Another officer just screamed until his signal went dead. High Commander Thalas stood up from his chair. His confident expression was gone. He shouted orders, trying to organize a defense, trying to coordinate a retreat. But it was too late. The humans had herded the Calanthe forces into carefully prepared kill zones. There was nowhere to run. In the command bunker, wounded soldiers started arriving. Varric saw people he knew. A communications officer he had trained with had burns covering half his body. A pilot he played cards with was missing an arm. They all said the same thing. The humans were demons. The humans moved too fast. The humans showed no mercy. Thalas ordered orbital bombardment. The ships above could destroy the city and everyone in it. But the humans had predicted this too. They had positioned themselves among the Calanthe troops. Any bombardment would kill more Calanthe than humans. Thalas could not give that order. He could not murder his own soldiers. Then an alert flashed on Varric's console. Human forces were moving toward the command bunker. They had found it. They were coming. Senior officers started destroying computers and burning documents. Guards prepared weapons. Everyone knew what was about to happen. Varric grabbed a rifle. His hands shook. He had never expected to fight inside a bunker. He had never expected to be defending the command staff. This was not how wars were supposed to work. But nothing about this war had been normal. They could hear the humans breaching the outer defenses. Explosions echoed through the corridors. Automated guns fired and then went silent. Emergency doors sealed, but everyone knew they would not hold long. Varric took position with 20 other Calanthe at the main entrance. They aimed their weapons at the door and waited. The door exploded inward. Flash grenades came through, blinding and deafening everyone. Varric fired his rifle wildly, unable to see. He heard others firing too. He heard Calanthe soldiers screaming. He heard bodies falling. Then something hit his rifle and knocked it from his hands. When Varric's vision cleared, he saw human soldiers everywhere. They wore helmets that hid their faces. They moved through the bunker like they had practiced this 1,000 times. They checked every corner. They secured every room. They shot anyone who resisted. It was efficient. It was brutal. It was over in minutes. Varric found himself on his knees. A human soldier stood in front of him. The soldier was smaller than Varric, but somehow seemed bigger. The rifle barrel pointed at Varric's head. Varric closed his eyes. He thought about his family. He thought about home. He waited for death, but the shot never came. The human soldier lowered the rifle slightly. The helmet tilted. Then words came through a speaker, speaking an accented Calanthe language. Surrender. Just one word. Varric opened his eyes and nodded. What else could he do? The humans secured the bunker. They checked the wounded Calanthe. Some were dead. Some were dying. The humans called for medics. Human medics came and started treating the injured Calanthe soldiers. Varric watched in confusion. Why save them? Why show mercy now? High Commander Thalas lay dead near his command chair. The architect of the invasion had been killed in seconds. Other senior officers were either dead or captured. The command bunker belonged to the humans now. The battle was over. Varric and the other survivors were taken outside. The city was burning. Bodies lay in the streets. Destroyed vehicles smoked. But among the destruction, Varric saw human soldiers helping wounded Calanthe. They gave them water. They bandaged wounds. They even carried the ones who could not walk. The prisoners were taken to a temporary camp. Varric expected torture. He expected abuse. Instead, the humans gave them food and medical care. A human doctor examined Varric's injuries. She was older, with kind eyes. She spoke a little Calanthe. She asked if he had pain. She gave him medicine. She treated him like a patient, not an enemy. That night, Varric sat in the camp with other survivors. They were all in shock. They had watched the Calanthe Empire's mighty army get destroyed in one day. 35,000 casualties, 10,000 captured. Human losses were under 1,000. It was not just a defeat. It was a massacre. It was impossible. But it had happened. A human commander came to address the prisoners. He was tall for a human, with gray in his hair and hard eyes. His words were translated through speakers. He said the Calanthe had invaded human homes. The Calanthe had tried to conquer them. Now the Calanthe understood why that was a mistake. He promised they would be treated according to the laws of war. When the conflict ended, they would go home. He told them to remember what happened here. Remember what humans could do when threatened. Varric lay on a thin mattress that night. He could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the explosions. He saw his friends dying. He saw the human soldier who could have killed him but chose mercy instead. Nothing made sense anymore. The humans were supposed to be primitive. They were supposed to be weak. But they had destroyed the Calanthe army like it was nothing. Days passed in the camp. The humans brought news. The Galactic Council was demanding a ceasefire. An ambassador was coming to investigate. Varric learned that other Calanthe attacks on human worlds had also failed. Everywhere the Calanthe fought, they lost. The Empire was in shock. How had this happened? How had they been so wrong about humanity? Then one morning, guards came and told Varric he was wanted for an interview. A Galactic Council ambassador wanted to speak with survivors. Varric was chosen because he was a communications officer. He had good records. He could speak clearly about what happened. They took him to a small room. An alien sat there. She was Voranthe, one of the ancient species. She had 4 eyes that seemed to see everything. A recording device sat on the table between them. She introduced herself as Ambassador Nira. She said his testimony would be shared across the galaxy. She asked if he understood. Varric nodded. Ambassador Nira's first question was simple but terrible. Tell me what happened here. Tell me about the humans. Varric took a deep breath. Where should he begin? How could he explain what he had seen? How could he make anyone understand what it was like to face humanity in war? He thought about his friends who died. He thought about the confident soldiers who had landed here weeks ago. He thought about how much had changed. Then he started talking. He told her everything. Varric sat across from Ambassador Nira in a small room. The recording device hummed softly between them. Her 4 eyes studied him carefully. He knew that whatever he said would be heard across thousands of worlds. Millions of people would watch his testimony. The truth about what happened at New Busan would spread throughout the galaxy. Nira started with basic questions. His name, his rank, his duties. Then she asked the hard question. Why did the Calanthe Empire think they could conquer humanity? Varric struggled to answer. It seemed so foolish now. They thought humans were weak. They thought humans were primitive. They had never failed to conquer a species before. All the reasons that made sense weeks ago now sounded like the thoughts of children. Nira pressed for details. What was the battle like? How did the humans fight? Varric closed his eyes and remembered. He described the explosions that killed his unit. He described the human soldiers who moved impossibly fast. He described the way they turned the entire city into a weapon. Every word was difficult to say, but what seemed to disturb Nira most was when Varric talked about human mercy. They killed without hesitation, he said, but then they saved our wounded. They followed rules even in the middle of war. I watched a human doctor work for hours to save a Calanthe soldier's life, even though humans had been dying all around her. Nira asked about the human soldiers who moved too fast, the ones who seemed stronger than they should be. Varric told her about the soldier who had captured him. The human had moved with speed that seemed impossible. The human had disarmed him effortlessly. Nira made careful notes. This information was important. It suggested humans had changed themselves somehow, made themselves more than they naturally were. After interviewing Varric, Nira spoke with the human soldier. Varric did not see this interview, but he heard about it later. The human was a captain named Jiwoo. She admitted to being enhanced, special modifications that made her faster and stronger. When Nira asked if she felt guilty about this, Jiwoo had said no. The Calanthe came to kill us. We did what we needed to survive. If that makes us monsters, we accept it. We are alive. Nira also interviewed the human commander. His name was Dae-hyun. He was the one who had planned everything. Varric watched a recording of this interview later. Dae-hyun showed no regret. He explained his strategy like a teacher explaining a lesson. The Calanthe thought we were weak, he said. They did not understand that humans have been fighting wars for our entire history. We know how to kill. We are very good at it. Dae-hyun had asked Nira a question that made her uncomfortable. Where was the Galactic Council when the Calanthe invaded our worlds? Where was the help when they were killing our civilians? You only came after we won. Nira had no answer for that. Ambassador Nira toured the prison camp where Varric and other survivors were held. What she found surprised her. The camp was clean. Prisoners had enough food. The wounded received medical care. The humans followed ancient laws about how to treat prisoners. Most species had abandoned these laws long ago. But humans still believed in them. The human doctor, whose name was Hai-wan, explained why. Just because we fight hard does not mean we stop being human. These prisoners are defeated enemies, not animals. We treat them with dignity. Varric found this confusing. The same humans who had killed thousands showed kindness to survivors. How could they be both? But Varric also understood the strategy. The humans wanted survivors. They wanted witnesses. They wanted people like him to go home and tell everyone what happened. The message was clear. Do not fight humanity. You will lose. And now Varric was part of spreading that message. Nira compiled everything into a report. She included Varric's testimony. She included interviews with humans and Calanthe. She included videos from the battle. She included casualty numbers that were hard to believe. Then she broadcast the report across the galaxy. The reaction was immediate. Trillions of beings across thousands of worlds watched and learned about humanity. The galaxy's view of humans changed overnight. They were no longer seen as a primitive upstart species. Now they were seen as dangerous. Some species called for humanity to join the galactic community as equals. Others wanted to isolate humanity, to keep them away before they became a threat to everyone. Varric became famous. His face was shown on news programs across the Empire. His testimony was replayed endlessly. Some Calanthe called him a hero for surviving. Others called him a traitor for telling the truth. His family faced harassment. People threw things at their house. His father stopped speaking to him. His military career was over. Everything he had worked for was destroyed. But something unexpected happened. Speaking about his trauma helped Varric process it. Each interview made things slightly clearer. He started to understand not just what happened, but why. He saw patterns. The Calanthe Empire was arrogant. They believed they were superior to everyone. They never questioned their right to conquer others. And that arrogance had led to disaster. Varric connected with other survivors from New Busan. They formed a support group. They helped each other deal with nightmares and memories. Many of them faced the same problems Varric did. Their own people did not want to hear the truth. The government denied how bad the defeat was. Veterans were told to stay silent, so Varric started writing. He documented everything he had seen. He wrote about the battle. He wrote about the human soldiers. He wrote about their philosophy of war. He published these writings anonymously on underground networks. They spread quickly, especially among young Calanthe who questioned their government. Varric became a voice for peace, not because he liked humans, not because he forgave what happened to his friends, but because he understood the cost of fighting humanity. He had seen it firsthand. He knew what would happen if the Calanthe tried again. Back on New Busan, life was returning to normal. Human families came back to their homes. Children played in streets where soldiers had died. The colonists rebuilt damaged buildings. They planted crops again. It was like the war had been just a brief interruption in their lives. But the humans who fought were not the same. Commander Dae-hyun visited families of dead soldiers. He attended every funeral. He carried the weight of all those deaths. Lieutenant Tae-yang, who had been so confident before, was quieter now. He had seen things that changed him. Captain Ji-woo was having her enhancements reversed. The modifications that made her so deadly were slowly being removed. She wanted to be fully human again, even if it made her weaker. Dr. Hae-won published a paper about military enhancements. She argued for strict limits. If we must fight, she wrote, let us not lose ourselves. Let us remain human even in war. Her paper influenced policies on dozens of worlds. Species that were developing similar enhancements reconsidered. The Galactic Council debated what to do about humanity. Should they welcome humans as members? Should they isolate human space? Should they try to limit human expansion? The debates went on for months with no clear answers. Everyone agreed on only one thing. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had announced itself. Nothing would be the same. Varric watched all this from his small apartment on Calanthea Prime. He was isolated from his community. His military honors had been stripped. His family did not speak to him, but he felt something like peace. He had told the truth. He had warned others. Maybe he had prevented future wars. Maybe his testimony would save lives. One day he received a message through encrypted channels. It was from Commander Dae Hyun. The message was short. Thank you. Your testimony is helping prevent more conflicts. When peace comes, you will always be welcome among humans. You have honor. Varric stared at that message for a long time. The human commander who had defeated his army was thanking him. The human commander called him honorable. It was strange. It was confusing. But somehow it helped. Maybe there was hope. Maybe understanding was possible even between former enemies. Ambassador Nira continued her work. She had witnessed something important at New Busan. She had seen how easily misunderstanding could lead to war. She had seen how quickly war could become horror. But she had also seen mercy and dignity in the middle of conflict. She made it her mission to prevent similar wars with other species. The galaxy stood at a crossroads. Humanity had proven they could not be conquered by force. Now the question was whether they could be integrated peacefully. Could humans and aliens learn to live together? Could old enemies become allies? Or would humanity forever remain apart, respected and feared but never truly accepted? Varric did not know the answers, but he knew one thing for certain. He would spend the rest of his life making sure the galaxy remembered what happened at New Busan. Not to shame the Calanthi, not to glorify the humans, but to teach one simple lesson. War has terrible costs. Understanding is always better than fighting. And sometimes the species you underestimate is the one you should fear most. 6 months passed after the Battle of New Busan. Varric returned to Calanthea Prime as part of a prisoner exchange. He thought going home would bring relief. Instead, he found a society that did not want the truth. The official HFY Story said New Busan was just a temporary setback. They claimed the humans got lucky. They said a proper campaign with more resources would succeed. Varric was ordered not to speak publicly. His testimony to Ambassador Nira was called propaganda. Military tribunals questioned him. They asked if he cooperated too much with his captors. Some officers accused him of treason. They said he made the empire look weak. His career was over. His reputation was destroyed. Not by humans, but by his own people. He struggled with nightmares every night. He saw explosions in his sleep. He heard his friends screaming. He woke up terrified, thinking human soldiers were coming through the door. But when he sought help, military doctors told him to be strong. They said real soldiers did not talk about fear. So Varric suffered alone. He started writing to cope with the trauma. He wrote everything down in detail. The battle, the humans, the conversations with their soldiers, everything. He published it anonymously on underground networks. The writings spread quickly. Young Calanthi read them and questioned their government. Veterans from other battles contacted him. They shared similar stories of being ordered to stay silent. Varric became an accidental leader of a peace movement. Other survivors joined him. They held secret meetings. They supported each other. They tried to warn anyone who would listen. Do not fight the humans. Please learn from our mistakes. But most Calanthi did not want to hear it. Meanwhile, the humans dealt with their own aftermath. Commander Dae Hyun was celebrated as a hero. Parades were held in his honor. But he attended funeral after funeral for the soldiers who died under his command. He visited hospitals full of wounded. He could not celebrate. He had won, but the cost haunted him. Captain Jiwoo underwent procedures to reverse her enhancements. The modifications that made her so deadly were slowly removed. It was painful. Her body rejected some of the changes, but she endured it. She wanted to be normal again. She wanted to be fully human, even if it meant being weaker. She told doctors she had seen what she could become if she stayed enhanced. She did not like that future. Dr. Haewon published papers about the ethics of war. She advocated for limits on military enhancements. She argued that victory meant nothing if humanity lost its soul in the process. Her work influenced policy across human space. New regulations were created. Future soldiers would not be enhanced as much as Jiwoo had been. Lieutenant Tae Yang stayed in the military but changed his focus. He led humanitarian missions instead of combat operations. He helped rebuild worlds damaged by natural disasters. He wanted to prove that humans could help as well as hurt. His idealism had been tested by war, but it survived. Then the Calanthe leadership made a terrible decision. They authorized a second military campaign against humanity. They had studied the failures of New Busan. They believed they knew how to win now. They assembled 300,000 troops. They planned to attack multiple human worlds at once. They would use overwhelming force. They would avoid urban warfare. This time would be different. Ambassador Nira tried desperately to stop it. She warned the Calanthe government. She showed them her reports. She told them they would fail again. But they did not listen. They believed New Busan was just one battle. They believed they could still win. The Galactic Council condemned the action but did nothing to prevent it. Varric watched news of the mobilization with horror. He knew what was coming. He tried to warn anyone who would listen. He contacted officials. He sent messages to military leaders. He published warnings on every network he could access. But he was dismissed as a broken veteran. His opinions did not matter anymore. In desperation, Varric did something that would make him a traitor forever. He leaked classified information about the Calanthe battle plans to human intelligence through anonymous channels. He could not let another massacre happen. He could not watch more young soldiers die because of Calanthe arrogance. He made his choice. The Second War began. The Calanthe fleet struck 4 human colonies simultaneously. But humanity had prepared. They had spent months studying Calanthe tactics. They had built defenses on every frontier world. They had trained soldiers specifically to fight Calanthe forces. Civilians were evacuated before the Calanthe even arrived. Each colony became a fortress. The humans had also improved their technology. They had reverse-engineered Calanthe equipment captured at New Busan. They built weapons designed to defeat Calanthe armor. They developed countermeasures to Calanthe sensors. The Calanthe advantage in technology was gone. What the Calanthe expected to be a swift campaign became a disaster. Human forces did not just defend. They counterattacked. Human ships ambushed Calanthe supply lines. Special operations teams raided Calanthe bases. Enhanced soldiers like Jiwoo, called back to service despite her unfinished reversal, conducted devastating strikes against Calanthe command posts. The decisive battle happened at a place called the Rift, a massive asteroid field near human space. Commander Daehyun, now promoted to admiral, commanded the human defense fleet. He used the asteroids as cover. Human fighters darted between rocks. Missiles came from unexpected angles. The Calanthe fleet was designed for open space battles. They could not adapt to this environment. When the battle ended, 60% of the Calanthe invasion fleet was destroyed. The survivors retreated in chaos. The campaign had lasted less than a month. It was not just a defeat, it was a complete disaster. Every species in the galaxy that had considered attacking humanity immediately reconsidered. The message was clear. Humanity could not be conquered by force. The Calanthe Empire was in shock. They had lost 2 major campaigns. Tens of thousands of soldiers were dead. Their military reputation was destroyed. Their government faced domestic unrest. Citizens questioned the leadership. Young Calanthe protested in the streets. The Empire was forced to accept reality. They could not defeat humanity. Peace negotiations began under Galactic Council supervision. Ambassador Nira served as the chief mediator. Both sides sent delegations to a neutral world. The talks were difficult. The Calanthe wanted reparations for their losses. The humans pointed out that the Calanthe had started the war. Old grievances were aired. Anger was expressed. Progress was slow. Then Varric did something unprecedented. He traveled to the negotiations as a private citizen. He was not part of any official delegation. He simply showed up and asked to speak. Ambassador Nira, recognizing him, allowed it. Varric stood before delegates from dozens of species and told his story again, but this time he focused on the lessons learned. He talked about how the Calanthe had been arrogant, how they had underestimated humanity, how that arrogance had cost thousands of lives. He spoke directly to the Calanthe delegation. We started this war because we thought we were superior. We were wrong. Thousands died because of our pride. If we want to truly be superior, we must be wise enough to make peace. The speech was broadcast across the galaxy. Varric's words reached billions. He had been a symbol of defeat. Now he became a symbol of reconciliation. Messages poured in supporting him. Even some Calanthe leaders praised his courage. The negotiations gained new momentum. Then Varric received a message through official channels. It was from Commander Daehyun. The message said, "Thank you. Your warning saved thousands of human lives. You are an honorable being. When peace comes, you will always be welcome among us." Varric read that message many times. He had betrayed his own species to save another. His people would never forgive him. History would record him as a traitor, but he had prevented a worse massacre. He had saved lives on both sides. He knew he had made the right choice, even if it cost him everything. The galaxy watched and waited. Would the peace talks succeed? Would humanity and the Calanthe find a way to coexist? Or would the cycle of violence continue? The answer would determine the future of everyone. Because if these two species could make peace after such horror, then maybe there was hope for the galaxy. Maybe understanding was possible even between the bitterest enemies. Varric sat in his small room on the neutral world, waiting for the next day's negotiations. He was tired. He was scared. But he was also hopeful. Maybe, just maybe, something good could come from all the death and suffering. Maybe his testimony had not been in vain. Maybe peace was actually possible. 2 years after the Battle of the Rift, formal peace talks finally concluded. The Treaty of Concordia was signed on a neutral world, witnessed by representatives from dozens of species. Ambassador Nira stood between the human and Calanthe delegations as they put their marks on the document. The war was officially over. The treaty established mutual recognition of borders. A demilitarized zone was created between human and Calanthe space. Prisoners would be exchanged. War crimes would be investigated. Most importantly, humanity would join the Galactic Council as a full member. They would no longer be outsiders. They would have a voice in galactic affairs. Not everyone was happy. Calanthe hardliners called it a surrender. They said the Empire had legitimized its defeat. Human isolationists argued that joining the Council compromised their independence. But most people, tired of war and death, welcomed the peace. The fighting was over. That was what mattered most. As humanity joined galactic civilization, cultural exchange began. Human art spread across Council space. Human music was played on alien worlds. Human stories were translated into thousands of languages. Other species were fascinated by human creativity and resilience. They studied human history, amazed by how often humans had survived impossible situations. Human scientists worked with alien researchers. Together, they made breakthroughs in medicine that saved lives across species. Human engineers helped design better spacecraft. Human farmers shared techniques that increased food production. Humanity contributed to galactic society in ways beyond just warfare, but humanity also learned from the galaxy. Advanced alien technologies accelerated human development. Alien philosophies influenced human thought. Medical treatments that were impossible before became routine. Humans could travel faster and farther than ever before. The isolation that had defined humanity ended. They were part of something larger now. Varric accepted a position with the Galactic Council as an advisor on human affairs. His job was to help other species understand humanity, to prevent misunderstandings that could lead to conflict. He wrote a memoir about his experiences called What I Learned on New Busan. It became required reading at military academies across the galaxy. He never fully recovered from his trauma. Nightmares still woke him some nights. Loud noises made him flinch, but he found purpose in his work. He helped negotiate disputes. He advised diplomats. He prevented conflicts before they started. His suffering had meaning now. Varric developed an unlikely friendship with Admiral Daehyun. The two former enemies met regularly. They talked about war and peace. They shared their struggles with guilt and memory. Daehyun still kept a list of every human casualty from New Busan. He read their names every year on the anniversary. Varric understood. He carried his own list of Calanthe dead. Daehyun had been promoted to admiral and given command of humanity's first deep space exploration fleet. He led missions to uncharted regions of the galaxy, but he was different now. He sought diplomatic solutions before military ones. He established protocols for peaceful first contact with new species. He wanted to ensure that what happened with the Calanthe never happened again. Captain Jiwoo had finished her enhancement reversal and left the military. She became an advocate for veterans' rights. She spoke publicly about the cost of turning soldiers into weapons. She testified before governments about the ethics of military enhancement. Her work led to new regulations across human space. Future soldiers would not be modified as extensively as she had been. She also became a teacher. She trained young soldiers, but not in how to kill. She taught them how to maintain their humanity even in combat, how to follow the rules of war even when it was difficult, how to show mercy even to enemies. Her students called her the best teacher they ever had. Dr. Haewon became humanity's first representative to the Galactic Medical Council. She worked to establish universal healthcare standards across species. She developed therapies for treating trauma in different alien physiologies. Her papers on cross-species medicine saved countless lives. She maintained contact with Varric, and they worked together on projects to help veterans from both sides. Lieutenant Tae-yang remained in military service but focused on humanitarian operations. He led human forces in disaster relief missions across the galaxy. When earthquakes struck alien worlds, he was there helping. When floods devastated colonies, he brought aid. His idealism had survived the war, finding new expression in service. When asked why he stayed in uniform after experiencing such horror, he explained simply, "I learned that humans are capable of terrible violence, but we are also capable of tremendous compassion. I choose to represent the latter." His relief missions became famous. Other species saw that humans could help as well as hurt. Ambassador Nira continued her work with the Galactic Council. She used her experience from the human Calanthe War to develop better first contact protocols. She emphasized understanding over assumptions. She taught diplomats to never underestimate emerging species. Her training prevented several conflicts with newly discovered civilizations. She also wrote the definitive history of the war. Her book included testimonies from both sides. It showed the conflict from multiple perspectives. It did not glorify anyone or demonize anyone. It simply told the truth about what happened and why. Schools across the galaxy used it as a textbook. A generation passed. Children who had been born during the war were now adults. They grew up in a galaxy where humans and Calanthe lived in peace. They studied the war in history classes. Some found it hard to believe their parents and grandparents had fought each other. The hatred seemed pointless now. The phrase "Remember New Busan" took on two meanings. For some, it was a warning about underestimating any species. For others, it was a reminder that even in the darkest conflicts, honor and dignity were possible. Military academies taught the battle as a case study in both tactics and ethics. New conflicts arose, as they always do in a galaxy full of different species with different needs. But when governments considered military action, they had to account for the possibility that their enemies might be more dangerous than they appeared. The age of casual conquest had ended. Species thought carefully before starting wars. 20 years after the Battle of New Busan, a memorial was erected on the site. Both human and Calanthe governments contributed to its construction. The monument honored all who died in the conflict, regardless of which side they fought for. The inscription read simply, "They fought, they died. May we learn from their sacrifice." At the dedication ceremony, elderly Varric stood beside retired Admiral Dae-hyun. They said nothing to each other. Words seemed inadequate. They simply stood together, two veterans united by shared trauma and hard-won respect. Ships from across the galaxy attended the ceremony. Human vessels flew alongside Calanthe cruisers. Former enemies stood as allies. A young human child approached Varric during the ceremony. She asked what the war was like. He knelt to her level, his crystalline skin reflecting her curious face. "It was terrible," he told her. "It never should have happened. Remember this place. Make sure nothing like it happens again." The child nodded seriously and ran back to her parents. As the ceremony concluded, Varric looked around at the gathered crowd. Humans and Calanthe stood together. Former enemies shared food and stories. Children of both species played together. This was what they had fought for, though neither side had known it at the time. Not victory or conquest, but the possibility of peace. Varric thought about his journey. From a confident soldier to a traumatized survivor to a voice for peace. He had lost friends, family, and career. But he had gained something too. Understanding. Purpose. The knowledge that even the worst situations could lead to something better. Years later, when Varric gave his final interview before his death, he was asked what he wanted people to remember. He thought carefully before answering. I went to New Busan expecting to witness humanity's conquest. Instead, I witnessed their triumph, not just in battle but in remaining human despite everything. That is the real lesson. That is what I want the galaxy to remember. A century after the war, a galactic historian compiled the complete account. She interviewed the last surviving witnesses. She studied archives from both sides. She pieced together the entire story. Her conclusion was simple but profound. The human Galactic War changed the galaxy. It taught species to respect each other. It showed that technological superiority does not guarantee victory. Most importantly, it proved that former enemies could become friends. The historian ended her work with a quote from Varric. We Calanthe, in our arrogance, nearly destroyed a species that had much to teach us. We learned our lesson the hard way. May others learn from our mistakes without paying the same price. Today, humanity is a respected member of galactic society. They contribute to science, art, culture, and peacekeeping. They are neither feared nor dismissed. They are simply accepted as equals. The war is remembered as a tragic but necessary lesson, a reminder that understanding is always better than conflict, that peace is always worth fighting for. And somewhere in the archives, Varric's testimony remains. Future generations watch it and learn. They see a young soldier trying to make sense of the horror he witnessed. They hear his message about the cost of arrogance and the value of humility. They remember.